sir. We have Adams Hill in sight.
Guys, 904 Foxtrot, enter left base, runway 18, contact the tower, 118.7, good day.
Alright, enter left base, runway 18 and tower 18.7. Have a good day, 904 Foxtrot.
Yeah!
Adams Tower, good morning. Skog 519 for Foxtrot's on a 12-mile left base, runway 18.
194 Foxtrot, Adams Tower, runway 18, clear to land.
Alright, clear to land, runway 18, 904 Foxtrot.
Hello YouTube, and welcome back to another episode of Non-Rev Stories, fight stories from a non-rev. On this episode of Non-Rev Stories, I fly with my good friend and captain for a major regional U.S. airline down to Houston, Texas and back. Before we get into this video, let's talk about social media. Green Brothers Flying is on every main social media platform. We are on Instagram at Green Brothers Flying, on Facebook as Green Brothers Flying, and on Discord. All links will be in the description below. On this episode of Non-Rev Stories, we head to Houston, Texas, and back. The day started bright and early with another 3 a.m. wake-up call. By 3:15 a.m., I was out of the house and on my way down to the airport. By 4 a.m., I was at the airport, and by 4:20 a.m., I was through security. Once I got through security, I went to my gate where my flight would leave out of. Today's gate assignment was gate number 1. Our aircraft was November 232 November in Embraer ERJ-145. I got my boarding pass with my seat assignment, and I was seat 2A, a window seat. Boarding was quick, and at 4:50 a.m., we pushed from the gate and taxied to runway 4 left for departure. At 5 a.m., we thundered down the runway and rocketed into the night sky bound for Dallas. After about 40 minutes in flight, we started our descent into the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area and landed on runway 17 left. We had a long taxi to the gate since we were parking on the west side at the B terminal, and we landed on the east side. After what seemed to be like a 20-minute taxi, we finally reached our gate. But upon reaching the gate, we had to wait for rampers for 5 minutes, and then finally at 6:10 a.m., we finally parked at the gate. With that small delay, I now had 45 minutes until my flight down to Houston Hobby. I got off the plane as soon as I could and wasted no time getting to the Skylink train, which would take me to my next terminal, Terminal E. Terminal E is broken down into two parts, the regular Terminal E and the Terminal E satellite. American Eagle, Envoys, 145s, and SkyWest all use that terminal for their regional flights. Around 6:30 a.m., I got to my gate and my boarding pass. I needed to charge my phone, but as soon as I got there, they started boarding. For this flight down to Houston Hobby, I was seated in seat 16B, an aisle seat. On this flight, our aircraft was November 824 Alpha Echo, an Embraer ERJ-140. The aircraft has a 1-2 seating configuration and one main cabin seating. After I put my stuff under the seat, I went back up to the flight deck to talk with my buddy about this flight. Since it was go-home day, they were going to fly as fast as they could so they could catch their commute home. For this flight, his first officer was flying. We cruised at an altitude of 22,000 feet or flight level 220. At 7:02 a.m., we pushed from the gate and had a short taxi to runway 17 right, and shortly thereafter, we were in the morning sky bound for Houston. Flight time today was a short 45 minutes. The flight was bumpy as there had been some leftover convective activity from the night before. About 15 minutes from landing, we started our descent into the Houston metro area and shortly thereafter landed on runway 4. It was an overcast day in Houston. We arrived at the gate at 8:22 a.m. and deplaned. Once I deplaned, I got some breakfast from Dunkin' Donuts. After that, it was time to head right back onto the plane back to Dallas. For this leg, my buddy would be flying, and we would be flying at 23,000 feet or flight level 230. For this flight, I was seated in seat 15C. At 8:47 a.m., we pushed from the gate and taxied to runway 31 left and thundered into the sky. We reached our cruising altitude shortly thereafter. It was bumpy going back to Dallas as it was bumpy going to Houston. 15 minutes from landing in Dallas, we started our descent into Dallas. 15 minutes later, we landed at Dallas and taxied to our gate in the East Satellite Terminal. We arrived at the gate at 10:09 a.m. Coming into Dallas, we landed on runway 31 right, which I have never done before. After I deplaned, my buddy and I went to the Skylink to try and make our flights home. But as we are approaching our station, the Skylink train broke down. We were in the Skylink so long that we both missed our flights home. As much as we were frustrated, we had to look on the bright side. After all of that, we both decided that we needed lunch, so since we already headed to the B terminal, we would get lunch there. We decided on Cousin's Barbecue. I had the pulled pork sandwich with fries, and it was really good. After talking for quite some time, we headed back over to the C terminal to talk until my buddy's second flight home left. Once he left, I hopped on the Skylink train and went back to Terminal B to see if I could get on the flight home. I couldn't, so I started looking at options. I decided to go to Chicago and then back to Little Rock since all the rest of the Dallas to Little Rock flights were full. After a lot of work, I finally got myself on a standby list for Flight 2418 to Chicago O'Hare. After I got myself on the list, I hopped back on the Skylink and went to the A terminal where my flight was departing from. My flight was scheduled to leave at 4:39 p.m. and get into Chicago at 7:07 p.m. Today's flight would be operated by an Airbus A321 November 905 Alpha uniform. Since this was a full flight, they had to clear standbys as they boarded, and since I was lower on the list, I got what was left over. My seat turned out to be in the very back of the bus, no pun intended, seat 36C, and aisle seat in the last row of the plane. We left the gate on time, and by this time they had made a runway swap, so we taxied to runway 35 left for departure. A few minutes later, we rocketed into the sky and we were on our way to Chicago. This flight was a quick hour-and-a-half flight as we had strong tailwinds going north. Not long after departing, we reached our cruising altitude of 35,000 feet, or flight level 350. 20 minutes from landing, we started our descent and shortly thereafter landed on runway 28 center. We taxied to Terminal 4 and arrived at the gate on time at 7:07. Since I was at the back of the plane, I was one of the last ones off and got off the plane around 7:15 p.m. Once I was off, my buddy Richie, who I have mentioned before in my videos, texted me and told me he was also on his way to the Chicago airport to fly back home to Little Rock. Once we got there and went through security, we still had about 30 minutes until boarding, so we went all the way to the United side again and got Jamba Juice. Once we did that, we walked back to the gate, Lima 22, and boarded the airplane. Our airplane today was November 231 Alpha November, an Embraer ERJ-145, and my seat was 8D, an aisle seat and main cabin extra. The flight was empty, so I ended up having the whole row to myself, which was nice. At 8:37 p.m., we pushed from the gate and taxied over to runway 22 left. We took off shortly thereafter, and before we knew it, we were in the night sky of Chicago.
What you did in the dark. So light 'em up, light 'em up, light 'em up, I'm on fire. So light 'em up, light 'em up.
We reached our cruising altitude of 36,000 feet, or flight level 360. We settled in for the short hour-and-a-half flight. About 20 minutes out from Little Rock, we started our descent into the Little Rock area. After about 20 minutes, we landed on runway 4 left and taxied to Gate 1. Not much happened after that as I drove home If you enjoy these videos and want to see more, please give this video a like, comment, and of course subscribe. Until the next one, blue skies and a tailwind.